So Joe Lieberman getting a little desperate here at the end. Last weekend, he says at the end of his speech, he's talking. He's like, "Look, I've been helping you, and I've got momentum," and blah blah blah. And then he gets to the end, and he says, "Look at me, folks. I'm not George Bush."
Yeah, if Joe Lieberman wins, at least first of all, it will have been still a great accomplishment for Ned Lamont. But that's a victory all by itself. That you got Joe Lieberman to say, "I'm not George Bush."
No, dude, that's desperate and really sad when when your campaign slogan is, "Look at me, folks. I'm not George Bush," and you're a Democrat. So he's in a bit of trouble here. But Newt Gingrich thinks that, of course, if we go with Lamont, it's going to be the wrong direction. Here he is.
And third, you have what I think is a legitimate insurgency in Connecticut, which needs to be met head-on and debated head-on, which is people who say, this is so hard, it is so frightening, it's so painful, can't we come home and hide? And I think if Lamont wins next Tuesday, it will be the beginning of an extraordinarily important period in American politics and in American history for all of us to have this debate. How dangerous are the terrorists? How dangerous are the dictatorships? And what does America have to do in that kind of a dangerous world?
I wish people would listen to me more, because I told the Lamont campaign, I told them that "can't we just come home and hide" was not a good campaign slogan. But he was like, "You don't know what you're talking about. Vote Lamont, come home and hide." It says it right there.
Well, I mean, that's why I'm supporting Lamont. You guys heard throughout the show our different reasons for voting for Lamont. And primary among them is, I want to come home and hide.
I want to hide. I would like to hide. There's so much evil in the world. Can't we just hide?
And the second part of that is, I don't think that terrorism and dictatorships are that important.
No, I think they're unimportant.
Unimportant. So I think come home and hide.
No, look,
Lamont.
Terrorism dictatorships are unimportant, but if they ever emerge, just hide from them.
Please make an actual argument as to what you mean. Why, what are the real dangers in the world? Why do you think the Lamont supporters are headed in the wrong direction? Don't give me this. They're hiding from terrorism and dictatorship, and they want to run home. That's not a real point. That's debasing yourself to even say that. So just if you have a real point, make it. Otherwise, shut up. And that's why people have at times and will say to me, "Oh, you're like the Bill O'Reilly of the left," or whatever. But look, at some point you got to tell people shut up because they're not making any sense.
Mike in Connecticut. Mike, how are you? Welcome to the Young Turks.
Good. How are you?
Good. What's up?
I'm still undecided. I could still vote for Joe Lieberman tomorrow.
Why are you undecided, Mike?
And I'll tell you, in a perfect world, this is what I'd like to see. I'd like to see Joe Lieberman just barely win the nomination and have it be sort of metaphorically taking him out back and hitting him with a stick.
Well, by the way, I'll let you continue. Let me tell you that already that your idea of that Joe Lieberman will barely win and therefore will have been taught a lesson, and we'll see that these people are not far left fringe crazy people. They're regular people who are incredibly disappointed with the political coverage that he's given to the president and the support he's given to the Iraq War in the face of overwhelming facts to the contrary. If Joe Lieberman wins by one vote tomorrow, it will be seen as a tremendous late comeback by the Democratic establishment. There will be no lesson. It will be all of a sudden a huge upset that Joe Lieberman came back and won. So I would forget about the lesson being taught.
Why do you still hang on to the guy? He's not going to learn any lesson. He's in the midst of this heavy fight. He still says that he would do Iraq over again. How can you vote for that?
I'll tell you why. Because I disagree with him on Iraq, but there is at least a decade of watching Joe Lieberman do many other things that, I always liked and supported Lieberman, and it would be very hard to vote against him at this point. On that one issue, I'd agree to let, if that's how he feels and that's his opinion, he feels that strongly about it.
But Mike, I understand respecting him, and you've liked him for 10 years. I totally understand that. But we're not talking about one issue. We're not talking about welfare reform, which is an important issue. We're not talking about Social Security even. We're talking about the most important issue of our time. He would do it again. It's the worst foreign policy mistake in American history, and he's providing political coverage to, I'm sure, a guy who you think's the worst president we've had in the last 100 years.
Number one, it's not just Iraq. Don't buy into that hype. Hey, we did this filibuster show here, and we were trying to get the Democrats to filibuster Alito, and the guy who scuttlebutted that whole thing was Joe Lieberman. He pretended
That's where Lieberman lost me. Was at that moment is when I started to turn. I had forgiven him up until that point.
All right.
So that's another huge thing. See, it's not just that he voted the wrong way. He undermined the whole party there. Do you see what I'm saying, Mike? Because of him, they couldn't do that. And it's not just that. On Terry Schiavo, he was on Meet the Press. He says, I'll keep the plug in. I mean, on the most horrific thing that the Republicans are doing, he's still gung-ho with them. I mean, given all that, what we know about Lamont is what he promises, okay? And that's that he's going to do the things that you want him to do, Mike. Isn't that worth giving him a shot for?
It is. I wish I had more knowledge of seeing him in action somewhere else.
Well, Mike, we're out of time. I would only tell you this, that you can still respect Joe Lieberman. You can still respect what he's done. You may not know a lot about Ned Lamont, but you know that Joe Lieberman, on the two most important issues we've faced, Sam Alito, the war in Iraq, he's let us down. It doesn't mean he's a bad guy, but he has to earn your vote every time. You've already rewarded him. You've already voted for him before. You are not duty-bound to do it again. But thank you for calling, and glad you're thinking about it.
Don't let him do the same mistakes again. That's the key thing. Young Turks.